The text message arrived at 11:47 p.m., 3 minutes before Yan Mu's world shattered into pieces he would spend 8 years trying to reassemble. His phone screen illuminated the cramped studio apartment, casting blue light across unpaid bills scattered on a desk that wobbled because one leg was shorter than the others. The message was from Lila, his girlfriend of 2 years, the woman he'd sacrificed everything for, the reason he worked 3 part-time jobs while attending night classes, the person who promised she'd wait until he became stronger, until he evolved past ordinary status, until he could finally afford the life she deserved. The message contained no words, just a video file, and when Yan Mu pressed play with trembling fingers, he watched his entire future collapse in 63 seconds of footage showing Lila in the arms of Fan Lei, a mutant-class evolver whose beast soul gave him strength ordinary humans could never achieve, kissing her in the same restaurant where Yan Mu had proposed 6 months earlier using money borrowed from loan sharks he still hadn't paid back. The phone slipped from his hand and cracked against the concrete floor. Yan Mu didn't move to pick it up. He sat motionless on the edge of his mattress, which lay directly on the ground because he'd sold his bed frame to pay for Lila's mother's surgery, staring at the wall where he'd taped a photograph of them together at the beach, back when she still looked at him like he mattered, before his failure to evolve beyond ordinary status turned her affection into contempt disguised as patience. The wallpaper in his apartment was peeling in 3 places, revealing water damage from pipes the landlord refused to fix. Yan Mu had learned to place buckets beneath the leaks. He'd learned to accept many things he shouldn't have accepted. His reflection in the darkened window showed a young man who looked older than 26, thin from skipping meals to send money home to his mother, eyes hollowed by exhaustion and something deeper, something that happened when dreams died slowly enough that you couldn't pinpoint the exact moment hope became delusion. He worked as a night janitor at a corporate office building, a delivery driver during afternoon hours, and a data entry clerk on weekends. Every dollar went toward 3 destinations: his mother's medical bills after his father died in God's sanctuary 5 years ago, Lila's expensive tastes in restaurants and clothes and entertainment, and the fees required to enter God's sanctuary repeatedly in desperate attempts to hunt beasts that might drop the geno points needed to evolve past his ordinary status. Lila had met Fan Lei 3 months ago at an Evolver networking event she'd convinced Yan Mu to pay for, claiming it would help his career prospects. Fan Lei owned a security company that contracted mutant-class evolvers to wealthy clients. His beast soul allowed him to lift over 800 pounds without breaking stride. He drove a car worth more than Yan Mu would earn in 5 years. He wore watches that cost what Yan Mu's mother needed for 6 months of treatment. And apparently, he'd been sleeping with Lila since that first networking event, in hotel rooms Yan Mu's salary could never afford, making promises about a future that included luxury apartments and international travel and a lifestyle where she'd never need to pretend to care about a weak ordinary class evolver who couldn't even afford to fix his own broken phone screen. Yan Mu stood and walked to his window, looking out over the city's lower districts where people like him lived, stacked in concrete boxes, working themselves to death for scraps while evolvers in the upper districts lived like gods among mortals. The Alliance world economy ran on a simple principle: power determined value, and God's sanctuary determined power. Those who evolved using geno points from sacred blood creatures became physically superhuman, their bodies enhanced to levels that made them untouchable. Companies hired them for premium wages. Society elevated them to celebrity status. Women like Lila gravitated toward them like moths to flames that could actually keep them warm. The system was elegant in its cruelty. God's sanctuary existed as a parallel dimension where humans awakened inside shelters, forced to hunt creatures and consume their flesh to gain geno points across 4 tiers: ordinary, primitive, mutant, and sacred blood. Each tier had 100 points. Filling all 100 ordinary geno points might increase your strength by 20%. Filling primitive points might double your base capabilities. Mutant points turned humans into something beyond, and sacred blood completion created beings who could shatter concrete with their bare hands and survive falls that would kill normal people. Yan Mu had spent 4 years entering God's sanctuary. He'd hunted ordinary creatures in the safe zones near his assigned shelter. He'd saved every credit to buy better weapons from other evolvers. He'd studied beast patterns, learned survival tactics, mapped dangerous territories. And after 4 years of constant effort, he'd managed to fill 87 ordinary geno points out of 100. 13 points away from even beginning primitive evolution. 13 points that might as well have been 13 million, because the remaining ordinary creatures in accessible areas had been hunted nearly to extinction by evolvers like him, desperate and weak, fighting over scraps. His phone buzzed again, the cracked screen still functional enough to display another message from Lila. This one contained words: "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Fan Lei can give me the life I deserve. You're a good person, but I can't wait forever for you to become strong. I hope you understand." Yan Mu laughed, a sound without humor that echoed in his empty apartment. She hoped he understood. 4 years of his life, every dollar he'd earned, every sacrifice he'd made, and she hoped he understood why she'd chosen a man who could afford to treat her like the prize she believed herself to be. The worst part was that some broken piece of him did understand. What woman would choose a future of poverty and struggle when strength and wealth stood ready to provide everything she wanted? He picked up his cracked phone and typed a response he immediately deleted. Then typed another and deleted that too. What was there to say? That he'd loved her? That he'd believed her when she said power and money didn't matter? That he'd actually thought his determination and effort would eventually be enough? All lies he'd told himself to make the exploitation bearable. Instead, he opened his banking app. The balance showed $372.16. His rent was due in 4 days, $1,000 for a studio apartment with broken plumbing and peeling wallpaper. His mother's medication cost $600 monthly. The loan sharks he'd borrowed from to buy Lila's engagement ring wanted $200 weekly. The math didn't work. The math had never worked. He'd been running on hope and delusion, and now both accounts were empty. Yan Mu grabbed his jacket and left the apartment, walking through streets that never truly slept, past convenience stores with flickering neon signs and fast food restaurants where night shift workers stared at nothing with eyes that recognized their own reflection in his. The city's lower district smelled like exhaust fumes and desperation, a scent so familiar he barely noticed it anymore. He walked for 30 minutes, no destination in mind, until he found himself standing outside the God's Sanctuary Access Center, a government-run facility where evolvers could enter the parallel dimension for a fee. The night clerk looked up from her desk, recognized him as a regular, and offered a tired smile. Back again, Yan Mu? You were just here 2 days ago. How much for entry? He asked. Same as always. $50. He had $372 to his name and no plan for how rent or his mother's medication or the loan sharks would be paid, but he pulled out his wallet and placed $50 on the counter because pain in God's sanctuary was cleaner than pain in the real world. In the sanctuary, at least enemies came at you honestly, with claws and fangs, instead of smiling while they destroyed you from the inside. The clerk processed his payment and led him to the transfer chamber, a sterile white room with a platform in the center. Be careful in there, she said, the same warning she gave everyone, knowing most people never listened. I heard there's been increased sacred blood creature activity in the outer zones. Yan Mu stepped onto the platform. Thanks for the warning. Light engulfed him, and reality shifted. The sensation of transfer never became comfortable, a feeling like being pulled through a space too narrow for human bodies, compressed and stretched simultaneously, lasting only seconds but feeling like hours. When the light faded, Yan Mu stood in steel armor shelter, the same shelter where he'd spawned 4 years ago when he first entered God's sanctuary, a stone structure surrounded by wilderness that ranged from merely dangerous to instantly lethal depending on how far from the walls you ventured. The shelter's interior marketplace buzzed with activity even at night. Evolvers traded beast souls, ordinary weapons made from creature parts, and information about hunting grounds. Yan Mu walked past stalls selling meat from freshly killed ordinary beasts, each piece worth Geno points if consumed, prices marked in credits that transferred between worlds through quantum-linked banking systems. A pound of ordinary beast meat cost about $20. He'd need to kill and harvest 50 pounds of meat just to break even on his entry fee, and ordinary beasts in the safe zones had become scarce enough that most hunters returned empty-handed more often than not. He purchased basic supplies from a vendor who clearly remembered him as a repeat customer who never bought anything expensive, a steel sword with visible rust spots, 10 feet of rope, a water canteen, and jerky made from ordinary beast meat that would provide minimal nourishment but might keep him alive if he got stranded in the wilderness longer than planned. Total cost, $43, leaving him with $279.16 in the real world, numbers that scrolled through his mind like a countdown to disaster. The shelter's north gate led to the outer zones, areas beyond the patrols where ordinary creatures still existed in huntable numbers but where primitive and mutant-class beasts also roamed, meaning instant death for an evolver of Yan Mu's level if he encountered the wrong creature. He'd never ventured that far before, always staying in the safe zones, taking careful hunts that yielded minimal progress. But tonight felt different. Tonight, nothing seemed worth preserving. Yan Mu walked through the north gate as the guard called out a warning about recent sightings of a sacred blood creature in the deep wilderness. He kept walking. The landscape beyond the shelter transformed from maintained paths to wild forest within minutes, trees growing thick and twisted, their bark striped with colors that didn't exist in the Alliance world, leaves that whispered secrets in languages humans couldn't comprehend. Moonlight filtered through the canopy, casting silver patterns across ground where ordinary creatures left tracks that Yan Mu had learned to read through years of desperate hunting. He followed a trail for 2 hours, moving deeper into territory he'd never explored, until he spotted movement in a clearing ahead. An ordinary creature resembling a wolf but larger, with fur that shimmered between gray and green, was feeding on something already dead. Yan Mu approached carefully, sword raised, knowing one mistake could end his life but finding he didn't care as much as he should have. The creature noticed him, turned, and charged. The fight lasted 30 seconds. Yan Mu had become competent through necessity, his movements efficient if not spectacular, and the ordinary beast died with his sword through its throat, collapsing in a heap of strange-colored fur and muscle. He butchered it quickly, harvesting 43 pounds of meat that would give him 43 ordinary Geno points if he consumed it all, bringing him to 130 points total, 30 into primitive status, actual progress for the first time in months. He should have been happy. Instead, he felt nothing as he loaded the meat into his pack and continued deeper into the wilderness, chasing a feeling he couldn't name, running from thoughts he couldn't escape. The forest grew darker, the moonlight struggling to penetrate the canopy, and Yan Mu realized he'd walked far enough that returning to the shelter before dawn would be difficult. He should turn back. He kept walking. The scream of a beast's soul echoed through the trees, a sound that sent primal terror through every human who heard it. Yan Mu froze. That wasn't an ordinary creature. That wasn't even primitive. The sound carried power that made his bones vibrate, a frequency that spoke of sacred blood status, of creatures so far beyond his ability to fight that encountering one meant certain death. He should run. Every instinct screamed at him to run. But Yan Mu had spent 4 years running from the truth that he wasn't strong enough, wasn't good enough, would never be enough, and he found himself walking toward the sound instead of away from it, drawn by the same impulse that made people step off buildings and into traffic, the desire for an ending that felt like a choice instead of slow deterioration. The forest opened into a massive clearing where moonlight poured down in silver sheets, illuminating the scene like a stage set for his final act. In the center stood a creature that defied description, a beast shaped vaguely like a wolf but the size of a small house, its fur composed of what looked like living moonlight, constantly shifting and flowing, its eyes twin pools of liquid silver that reflected the night sky. A sacred blood creature, possibly god tier based on the sheer pressure of its presence, something that could kill him with a glance. The moon beast turned its eyes toward Yan Mu, and he felt his body lock in place, unable to move, unable to breathe, caught in a gaze that saw through flesh and bone to the core of who he was. This was death. He'd come looking for it, and here it stood, beautiful and terrible, ready to grant what he'd been too cowardly to name as a wish. But the moon beast didn't attack. It stared at Yan Mu with what might have been curiosity or pity or recognition, and when it opened its mouth, sound emerged that shouldn't have been possible, words in a human language spoken by something that had never been human. You carried the scent of the moon's sorrow. How strange. Yan Mu found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. What? Betrayed by those you loved. Abandoned by fate. Weak despite effort. The moon beast's eyes seemed to look beyond the present moment, seeing past and future simultaneously. You came here to die, but death is too simple an answer for what you've suffered. I don't understand. The creature took a step forward, and Yan Mu felt its power wash over him like a wave, strong enough to crush him into paste if it chose. I am dying, the moon beast said. A battle with a rival sacred blood creature wounded me beyond recovery. I have perhaps an hour before my consciousness fades. In that hour, I will offer you a choice. What choice? Yan Mu asked, because what else was there to say when a god-tier creature spoke to you? I can kill you now, quickly, ending your suffering. Or I can bind my fading soul to yours, giving you power beyond imagination but at a cost you may not wish to pay. The moon beast's eyes flickered, growing dimmer. The binding would be incomplete, unstable. It would rewrite the fabric of your existence. You might not survive the process. But if you do, you will gain the ability to reshape your fate. Yan Mu laughed, the sound echoing in the clearing, bitter and broken. Why would you offer this to me? I'm nobody. Just another weak evolver who couldn't make it work. Because I recognize sorrow, the moon beast said. I have watched your kind for centuries, seen countless humans struggle and fail, and most accept their fate with quiet desperation. But you came here tonight not seeking mercy but defiance, however self-destructive. That spark interests me. Consider it my final act of curiosity. The creature began to glow brighter, moonlight pouring from its form like water from a breaking dam. Choose quickly. My time runs short. Death or transformation? Yan Mu thought about his apartment, the unpaid bills, the loan sharks, his mother's medication he couldn't afford, Lila in Fan Lei's arms, 4 years of effort that led to 87 ordinary Geno points and a life that felt like drowning in slow motion. He thought about the text message, I hope you understand. He thought about the look in the night clerk's eyes when she warned him about danger, the pity of someone who recognized a person at the end of their options. "Transform me," Yanmu said. The moon beast lunged forward, impossibly fast, and its jaws closed around Yanmu's entire body. Pain exploded through every nerve as teeth that felt like liquid silver pierced his flesh, not tearing but merging, the creature's essence pouring into him like molten metal filling a mold. He screamed, the sound lost in the overwhelming sensation of his body being unmade and remade, cells rearranging, DNA rewriting, consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of his skull. He saw his life, every moment from birth to present, displayed in crystal clarity. He saw the future he'd been heading toward: death by loan shark in 3 months, his mother dying 6 months after that unable to afford treatment, Lila marrying Fan Lei in a ceremony that cost more than Yanmu had earned in his entire life, his name forgotten by everyone except the creditors who'd write off his debt as a loss. He saw alternate timelines, possibilities that branched from different choices, lives he could have lived if he'd been stronger or smarter or luckier. And then he saw something impossible, his own life rewinding, time flowing backward like a river reversing course, years peeling away in rapid succession. 26 became 25, became 24, became 20, the moon beast's power grabbing hold of reality and twisting it like cloth, pulling Yanmu back through the current of his own existence. The last thing Yanmu saw before consciousness faded completely was a sigil burning itself onto his forearm, an eye shaped like a crescent moon, glowing with silver light that promised power and demanded sacrifice in equal measure. Then darkness swallowed everything, and Yanmu died for the first time in his life, not knowing he would wake up with a chance to live it again, 8 years in the past, with knowledge that could reshape the world and a system that would either make him a god among evolvers or destroy him more completely than any sacred blood creature ever could. The first sensation was wrongness, a feeling so profound it preceded conscious thought. Yanmu's body felt different, lighter somehow, muscles less developed, bones less dense. The mattress beneath him was softer than it should have been, and when he opened his eyes, sunlight streamed through a window that faced the wrong direction. His apartment window faced west, catching sunset but never morning light. This window faced east, and the room around him wasn't his cramped studio but a dorm room he hadn't seen in 8 years. Posters covered walls he'd forgotten, showing bands he'd loved at 18, movies he'd watched before life ground the enjoyment out of entertainment. A desk sat in the corner with textbooks stacked neatly, their spines showing titles from courses he'd taken during his first year at university. His roommate's bed across the room was empty, sheets unmade and a pattern Yanmu recognized, memories flooding back of a person he hadn't thought about in years. He sat up and looked at his hands. They were younger, smoother, without the calluses from 4 years of janitorial work and manual labor. His arms were thinner, lacking the lean muscle he'd developed from desperate survival in God's sanctuary. When he touched his face, the exhaustion lines were gone, the hollowness around his eyes filled in, his skin having the quality of someone who still believed effort would be rewarded. A mirror hung on the wall beside his bed. Yanmu stood and approached it slowly, almost afraid of what he'd see. The reflection showed an 18-year-old version of himself, fresh-faced and naive, wearing sleep clothes he recognized from a lifetime ago. His hair was longer, styled the way he'd worn it before practicality made him cut it short. His eyes held brightness he'd forgotten was possible, the light of someone who hadn't watched their dreams die in installments. The crescent moon sigil on his forearm burned with silver light, the only element that didn't belong to this timeline. Yanmu touched it and felt power surge through his body, foreign and familiar simultaneously, the moon beast's essence sleeping inside him like a predator waiting to wake. The moment his fingers made contact, text appeared in his vision, floating in the air like a holographic display only he could see. Moon's iGod system initialized. Host, Yanmu. Age, 18 years. Current date, June 15, 2017. Regression complete. Status, Ordinary Class Evolver, 0-100 Geno Points Life Points, 100 100ths. System mission loading. Yanmu stared at the text, his mind struggling to process what his eyes showed him. June 15, 2017. 8 years before the night he'd entered God's sanctuary and encountered the moon beast. 8 years before Lila sent him that video. He was 18 years old again, standing in a dorm room on the day after his high school graduation ceremony, the day before he was supposed to visit Lila's family for the first time and begin the relationship that would consume 4 years of his future life. The system text shifted, new words replacing old ones. Mandatory first mission. Objective, acquire $100 million in verified assets within 24 hours. Secondary objective, secure controlling interest in food real estate development company. Failure penalty, immediate death. Timer, 23:47 and 32 seconds. Yan Mu's breath caught in his throat. $100 million. 24 hours. A company he'd never heard of. The timer was already counting down, already consuming the seconds of his second life, and failure meant death, the system's cold efficiency making it clear that regression came with a price tag attached. His phone buzzed on the desk, an older model he'd owned at 18 before breaking it and downgrading to cheaper versions. The screen showed a text message from Lila. "Good morning. My parents are excited to meet you tomorrow. Make sure you dress nicely. First impressions matter. Love you." Yan Mu read the message 3 times, memories of his previous life overlaying the words with context she hadn't intended. This was the beginning, the moment before everything went wrong, before he let her family manipulate him into financing their lifestyle while they looked down on him for being ordinary class. Tomorrow he was supposed to visit their home with gifts he'd purchased using his parents' money, presenting himself as a suitable future son-in-law while Lila's father evaluated him like livestock. He deleted the message without responding and opened his banking app. The balance showed $8,200, money he'd saved from part-time jobs during high school combined with graduation gifts from relatives. In his previous timeline, he'd spent $6,000 of this on gifts for Lila's family, expensive liquor and jewelry and electronics meant to buy their approval. The memory made his stomach turn. The system text updated again. Analysis complete. Host possesses insufficient liquid assets for primary mission. Recommendation: leverage future knowledge for immediate capital generation. Available assistance: influence vision activated. The world shifted. Colors became more vibrant, and faint auras began appearing around objects and people visible through his window. Some auras glowed green, others red, most remained neutral gray. When Yan Mu focused on individual items, additional text appeared, providing information that shouldn't have been accessible. He looked at a convenience store across the street from his dorm. A green aura surrounded it, and when he concentrated, text displayed: lottery ticket sales location. Jackpot drawing tonight. Winning numbers: 7, 14, 23, 31, 38, 42. Powerball: 9. Prize value: $47 million. Yan Mu felt his heart rate spike. The system was showing him the future, giving him information that would let him win the lottery, providing the capital needed to begin his mission. But 47 million wasn't 100 million, and he had less than 24 hours to not only win the lottery but also somehow acquire controlling interest in a company he'd never heard of. He grabbed his phone and searched for Food Real Estate Development Company. The results showed a mid-sized construction firm that specialized in building shopping centers and restaurants, currently valued at approximately $200 million, trading publicly with shares worth about $38 each. Recent news articles mentioned financial difficulties, cost overruns on major projects, and rumors of bankruptcy within the next 6 months. More text appeared in his vision. Future analysis: Food Real Estate Development Company. Current status: near bankruptcy. Hidden value: primary construction site located 0.3 miles from future God's Sanctuary access point, steel armor shelter variant B access point. Manifestation date: August 12, 2019. Property value increase post-manifestation, 847%. Strategic importance: critical. The information crystallized in Yan Mu's mind. Food Real Estate Development Company was currently failing because they'd invested heavily in building a shopping complex in what seemed like an underdeveloped area with low foot traffic. But in 2 years, a God's Sanctuary access point would manifest near that exact location, turning the property into prime real estate worth hundreds of millions as evolvers flooded the area to access the sanctuary. The company didn't know they were sitting on a gold mine. They thought they were drowning. Yan Mu dressed quickly, pulling on clothes that felt strange after 8 years of wearing cheaper versions, and left the dorm room. His body moved differently, younger muscles responding with energy he'd forgotten existed, joints without the ache of premature aging from manual labor. The university campus sprawled around him, students celebrating the end of finals week, their faces showing optimism that made him feel ancient despite looking identical to them. He walked to the convenience store, the green aura visible only to him, pulsing with opportunity. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the clerk behind the counter was reading a magazine, barely glancing up as Yan Mu approached the lottery ticket machine. He filled out a slip with the numbers the system had provided, paid $2, and received a ticket that represented his first step toward either salvation or destruction. The drawing would happen at 11 tonight, 13 hours from now, and even if he won, collecting the prize would take time he didn't have. The system's timer continued counting down in the corner of his vision: 23, 14 and 27 seconds. 23 hours to acquire $100 million in control of a failing company. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Lila: You didn't respond to my first message. Is everything okay? You're not having second thoughts about meeting my parents, are you? Yanmu stared at the message, remembering the video, remembering her words about deserving better, remembering 4 years of emotional manipulation disguised as love. In his previous life, he would have immediately reassured her, apologized for worrying her, promised he was excited to meet her family. This time, he typed a different response: "We need to talk. Meet me at the campus coffee shop in 1 hour." Her reply came within seconds: "What's wrong? You're scaring me. Just meet me there." He pocketed his phone and walked toward the library, needing to research and plan before confronting Lila. The system had given him information, but turning that information into $100 million and a controlling interest in a company required strategy he needed to develop quickly. Inside the library's computer lab, Yanmu began searching for information about food real estate development company's financial status, shareholder structure, and current stock price. The company's situation was worse than initial articles suggested. They'd borrowed heavily to finance the shopping complex construction, and cost overruns had pushed them to the brink of default on those loans. Their stock price had fallen from a high of $93 per share 2 years ago to the current $38, and analyst predictions suggested further decline. The board of directors was desperate, and rumors indicated they were considering selling the company at a significant loss just to avoid complete bankruptcy. Yanmu pulled up the shareholder information. The founder and current CEO, a man named Kun Rui, owned 43% of shares. Various institutional investors held another 32%, and the remaining 25% traded publicly. To gain controlling interest, Yanmu would need to acquire either enough shares to exceed Kun Rui's stake or convince Kun Rui to sell directly. The system text updated with new information. Director Kun Rui analysis. Current status: desperate. Personal debt: $23 million. Family pressure: extreme. Psychological profile: prideful but practical. Leverage point: will sell controlling interest for $62 million cash if approached correctly. Optimal contact time: today, 2 p.m., outside company headquarters. Yanmu checked the time. It was 9:30 in the morning. He had 4.5 hours before the optimal contact window, 1 hour before meeting Lila, and less than 23 hours before the system's deadline killed him. The lottery drawing wouldn't happen until tonight, and even winning wouldn't give him immediate access to the prize money. He needed a different approach, something that could generate massive capital quickly. He opened a new search window and looked up cryptocurrency prices. In June 2017, Bitcoin was trading at around $2,800 per coin. Yanmu remembered, or rather the system's influence vision showed him, that Bitcoin would spike to nearly $20,000 by December of this year, a 700% increase in 6 months. But that didn't help his immediate situation. He needed money now, not 6 months from now. The system text shifted again, responding to his thoughts. Alternative capital generation method available. Underground gambling network accessible. High-stakes poker game tonight, 7 p.m. Participants include wealthy investors and businessmen. Potential winnings, $40 million to $80 million. Risk level, extreme. System assistance, probability calculation and opponent analysis available. Yanmu leaned back in his chair, processing this information. The system was offering him a way to generate massive capital through gambling, using its analytical abilities to give him an edge. Combined with the lottery winnings and strategic investment, he might be able to reach the $100 million threshold. But gambling at that level meant entering a world where losing could mean more than just failing the mission. People who played for those stakes didn't forgive debts, and Yanmu's 18-year-old body wouldn't intimidate anyone. Still, he didn't have many options. The timer continued its countdown, 22:47 and 15 seconds. Yanmu left the library and walked toward the campus coffee shop, his mind working through scenarios and contingencies. The morning sun felt warmer than it should have, or maybe he'd just forgotten what it felt like to have a future worth protecting. Students passed him on the sidewalk, laughing about summer plans and internships, living in a present where the worst thing that could happen was a bad grade or a rejected job application. Yanmu envied them the simplicity of their concerns. The coffee shop was moderately crowded, mostly students taking advantage of the late morning lull to catch up on sleep deprivation from finals week. Lila sat at a corner table, wearing a sundress that Yanmu recognized, having seen it in photographs from this time period in his previous life. She looked young, 19 years old, her face showing none of the calculating hardness he'd eventually learned to recognize beneath her smiles. She stood when she saw him, concern evident in her expression. "What's going on? You never asked to talk like this. Did something happen?" Yan Mu sat across from her without returning her greeting embrace. I've been thinking about us, about where this relationship is going. Lila's face shifted through several emotions, settling on defensive wariness. What do you mean? I thought everything was fine. We've been together for almost a year. Your parents, Yan Mu said, watching her reaction carefully. They want me to visit tomorrow. To evaluate whether I'm suitable for their daughter. That's what this really is, right? Not a casual family dinner but an inspection. She sat back down, her hands clasped on the table. That's not fair. They just want to meet you properly. Every parent wants to know who their daughter is dating. What did your father say about me? Yan Mu asked. When you told him you were dating someone, what was his response? Lila hesitated, and in that pause, Yan Mu saw the truth he'd missed in his previous timeline. He asked about your family background. About your prospects. That's normal. Did he ask if I was an evolver? What class? Yan Mu pressed. Her silence confirmed everything. I'm ordinary class, Yan Mu continued. 0 geno points currently. No beast souls. No enhanced physical capabilities. Just a regular human in a world where strength determines value. Your father doesn't think I'm good enough for you. Neither does your mother. They've probably already decided I'm unsuitable, and tomorrow's dinner is just a formality before they pressure you to end things. That's not true, Lila said, but her voice lacked conviction. They just want what's best for me. If you work hard, if you dedicate yourself to hunting in God's sanctuary, you can evolve. You can become stronger. How much money have you spent in the last 6 months? Yan Mu asked. The question caught her off guard. What? Restaurants, clothes, entertainment, gifts. How much of my money have you spent while dating me? Lila's face flushed with anger. I never asked you to pay for everything. You insisted. You said you wanted to treat me well. I did, Yan Mu agreed. And I would have continued doing it, working myself to exhaustion to afford the lifestyle you wanted, believing that my effort would matter eventually. But it won't, will it? Because no matter how hard I work, if I don't evolve fast enough, if I don't become strong enough, your family will convince you to leave me for someone better. Where is this coming from? Lila demanded. Did someone say something to you? This doesn't sound like you at all. Yan Mu stood, looking down at her with eyes that had seen 8 years of future she would never experience. I'm ending this. Right now. We're done. Her mouth opened in shock. You're breaking up with me? Because of assumptions about what my parents might think? I'm ending this because I finally understand what you and your family want from me, Yan Mu said. You want a meal ticket. Someone who will work hard and provide for you while you wait to see if something better comes along. I'm not interested in auditioning for the role of your backup plan. Lila stood as well, her voice rising enough that other customers began looking toward their table. You're being ridiculous. I love you. I chose you despite my parents' concerns. Doesn't that mean anything? You love what I represent, Yan Mu corrected. Potential. Someone you can shape into what you want. But I'm not your project, and I'm not going to spend the next 4 years proving myself to people who've already decided I'm not good enough. Find someone else to exploit. He walked out of the coffee shop before she could respond, his heart pounding not from emotion but from the sheer strangeness of the moment. In his previous timeline, he'd attended that dinner, endured the subtle insults and not so subtle evaluations, spent $6,000 on gifts, and began a 4-year cycle of trying to earn approval from people who would never give it. This time, he'd cut the pattern before it could begin, and the freedom of that choice felt like stepping out of chains he hadn't known were restraining him. The system text appeared again. Emotional manipulation resistance, successful. Life points restored, plus 10. Current life points, 110 100ths. New ability unlocked, future sight, limited clarity bonus, host can now see optimal decision paths in critical moments. Yan Mu walked back toward campus, processing this new information. The system was rewarding him for making choices that deviated from his previous timeline's mistakes, giving him additional abilities and resources. Life points apparently measured more than just physical vitality, they represented his capacity to sustain the regression itself, and making better decisions increased the capacity. He checked the time, 11:15. Less than 3 hours until the optimal window for contacting director Kun Rui, approximately 8 hours until the underground poker game, 12 hours until the lottery drawing. He needed to prepare for all 3 events simultaneously while also ensuring he didn't accidentally recreate other mistakes from his previous timeline. His phone buzzed with multiple texts from Lila, each one escalating from confusion to anger to attempted manipulation. He blocked her number and felt another surge of life points, plus 5. The system apparently approved of eliminating distractions. Yan Mu returned to his dorm room and began researching everything he could find about director Kun Rui, Food Real Estate Development Company, and the underground gambling networks that operated in the city. The system's influence vision provided additional context, showing him futures where certain approaches succeeded and others failed, letting him map out an optimal strategy. Director Kun Rui was 53 years old, married with 2 children, both attending expensive private universities. He'd founded Food Real Estate Development Company 20 years ago and grown it successfully until the recent catastrophic project failure. News articles showed a man who'd aged rapidly over the past year, stress etching lines into his face, his eyes holding the desperate look of someone watching their life's work crumble. The system provided additional information overlaid on Kun Rui's photographs. Director Kun Rui detailed analysis. Critical information: wife filed for divorce 3 days ago. Children blame him for financial instability. Personal psychological state, breakdown imminent. Optimal approach, offer solution, not pity. Leverage phrase: I see value where others see failure. Yan Mu memorized the information and prepared his approach. He would need to present himself as someone with resources and vision, despite being obviously 18 years old and lacking any apparent credentials. The system's influence vision would help him read Kun Rui's reactions and adjust his strategy in real time, but success ultimately depended on convincing a desperate man that an impossible offer was genuine. At 1:45, Yan Mu took a bus to the business district where Food Real Estate Development Company maintained its headquarters, a modest 10-story building that looked dated compared to the gleaming towers surrounding it. He arrived at 1:58 and positioned himself near the main entrance, waiting. Director Kun Rui emerged at 2:03, 4 minutes later than the system's predicted optimal contact time. He looked worse in person than in photographs, his suit expensive but rumpled, his movements carrying the weight of someone who'd stopped caring about appearances. He was walking toward the parking garage when Yan Mu stepped into his path. Director Kun, Yan Mu said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. My name is Yan Mu. I'd like to discuss purchasing a controlling interest in your company. Kun Rui stopped and looked at him with an expression that cycled from confusion to irritation to something that might have been desperate hope before settling back on suspicion. Who are you? Did someone send you? Nobody sent me, Yan Mu said. I'm here because I see value where others see failure, and I'm prepared to offer $62 million for your 43% stake in Food Real Estate Development Company. The number was exactly what the system had indicated Kun Rui would accept, specific enough to suggest genuine research rather than casual interest. Kun Rui's face went through another series of expressions before he laughed, a sound without humor. This is a joke, he said. Some kind of prank. You're what, 19 years old? 20? You expect me to believe you have $62 million? 18, Yan Mu corrected. And I don't currently have $62 million. I'll have it by tomorrow morning. The question is whether you'll still be available to sell at that point, or whether you'll have already accepted a worse offer from someone who doesn't understand what your property is actually worth. Kun Rui stared at him, and Yan Mu watched the man's aura shift through colors the system helped him interpret. Red for anger, blue for confusion, green for hope, yellow for calculation. You're serious, Kun Rui finally said. You actually think you're going to acquire $62 million overnight? I know I am, Yan Mu said, putting absolute confidence into his voice. And I know that property you're building near the old warehouse district is going to be worth 10 times what you paid for it within 2 years. Your company isn't failing because of bad management. You're failing because you made a brilliant long-term investment that nobody else can see the value of yet. The green hope aura intensified. Kun Rui took a step closer. How do you know about the warehouse district property? That project is confidential. I know many things, Yan Mu said. Including that your wife filed for divorce 3 days ago. Your children blame you for the family's financial problems, and you've spent the last month considering bankruptcy as your only option. I'm offering you a different option. Sell me controlling interest, stay on as CEO with full operational authority, and watch me prove that your vision was correct all along. Kun Rui's face went pale. Who are you really? What kind of game is this? The system text appeared in Yan Mu's vision. Critical moment detected. Optimal response, demonstrate genuine belief in subject's competence. Yan Mu met Kun Rui's eyes directly. I'm someone who understands what it feels like to watch years of effort collapse because nobody else can see what you see. I'm someone who knows that the difference between success and failure is often just a matter of timing and resources. You don't need saving, Director Kun. You need someone who believes in your vision enough to invest in it. That's what I'm offering. The silence stretched between them for 10 seconds that felt like 10 minutes. Then Kun Rui pulled out his phone and made a call. Cancel my 3 o'clock meeting. I need to speak with someone. He hung up and gestured toward the building. My office. Now. If you're wasting my time, I'll have security throw you out. But if you're serious, if you can actually deliver what you're claiming, then we need to talk details immediately. Yan Mu followed him inside, through a lobby that showed signs of cost-cutting measures, past employees who looked stressed and overworked, into an elevator that rose to the 9th floor. Kun Rui's office was spacious but austere, decorated with architectural awards from years past and blueprints for projects that would never be built. He closed the door and turned to face Yan Mu with an expression that mixed desperation and determination. Explain, Kun Rui said. All of it. Who you are, where this money is coming from, and why you want my company. Yan Mu sat in a chair without being invited and began laying out a story that mixed truth with necessary fiction. He couldn't mention the regression or the system, but he could talk about having advanced knowledge of certain market movements, having access to capital through methods he couldn't fully disclose, and seeing long-term value in properties others considered worthless. As he spoke, the system's influence vision showed him Kun Rui's reactions in real time, allowing him to adjust his pitch, emphasize certain points, and downplay others. He talked for 20 minutes, painting a picture of someone with unusual insight and access to resources, young enough to take risks that older investors wouldn't accept. When he finished, Kun Rui sat back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. Let's say I believe you can get the money. Let's say I'm desperate enough to consider selling to an 18-year-old I just met on the street. What guarantee do I have that you won't immediately fire me and strip the company for parts? You have my word that I'll keep you as CEO with full operational authority, Yan Mu said. I'm not interested in running a construction company. I'm interested in owning the land your company controls, specifically that warehouse district property. You continue operating the business exactly as you have been, and I handle the financial side. Your word, Kun Rui repeated. From someone I met 30 minutes ago. You don't have better options, Yan Mu said bluntly. In 3 weeks, your major creditors will foreclose. In 6 weeks, the company will enter bankruptcy proceedings. In 8 weeks, that property you believe in will be sold at auction for a fraction of its value, and you'll spend the next 5 years watching someone else profit from your vision. I'm offering you a way to avoid that future. The question is whether you're too proud to accept help from someone unexpected. Kun Rui's aura flashed through multiple colors before settling on decisive green. I need the money in my account by noon tomorrow. $62 million, verified and cleared. You deliver that, and I'll sign over my controlling stake. But if you're playing games, if this is some kind of con, I will spend the rest of my life making you regret it. Noon tomorrow, Yan Mu confirmed. I'll need your direct contact information and your bank account details for the wire transfer. They exchanged information, and Kun Rui pulled out a bottle of whiskey from his desk drawer, pouring 2 glasses despite Yan Mu's age. To unlikely partnerships, he said, raising his glass. Yan Mu accepted the glass but didn't drink, setting it down after the toast. To proving everyone wrong about what your property is worth. He left the building at 3:30. His phone now containing direct contact with a company director who would either make him wealthy beyond imagination or expose him as a fraud by noon tomorrow. The system's timer showed 18:23 and 47 seconds remaining, and he still needed to acquire $100 million, which meant winning the lottery tonight, winning a massive poker game tonight, and somehow converting those victories into verified assets within the deadline. The difficulty of the task should have been overwhelming, but Yan Mu found himself smiling as he walked back toward campus. For the first time in 8 years, counting both his previous life and the second chance, he felt like he was moving forward instead of drowning slowly. The system had given him tools and knowledge, but success would require execution, and he'd spent 4 years in God's sanctuary learning that survival demanded perfection under pressure. His phone buzzed. Not Lila this time but his mother, calling from the family home 3 hours away by train. Yan Mu answered, and her voice came through warm and familiar. Yan Mu, I haven't heard from you since graduation. How are you doing? Are you eating well? The sound of her voice hit harder than expected, memories flooding back of her slow decline in his previous timeline, working herself to exhaustion to pay medical bills while he failed to protect her. I'm doing well, Mom. Better than I've been in a long time. That's good to hear. Your father would be proud of you, graduating with honors. I wish he could have been there. Her voice carried old grief, the wound of losing her husband in God's sanctuary still raw even 5 years later. Mom, Yan Mu said, making a decision. I'm going to send you money soon. A lot of money. Enough that you won't need to work anymore, enough to pay off the house and Dad's medical debts. She laughed. That's sweet, but you don't need to worry about me. Focus on your studies, on building your future. I'm managing fine. I'm serious, Yan Mu insisted. Within the next month, everything is going to change. Trust me. There was a pause on the line. You're not doing anything dangerous, are you? You're not borrowing money from those loan sharks like your father did? Nothing like that, Yanmu promised. Just trust me, okay? I'm going to take care of you the way I should have been doing all along. They talked for a few more minutes before saying goodbye, and when Yanmu hung up, the system text appeared again. Familial bond acknowledged. Life points restored, plus 15. Current life points, 131 hundredths. Motivation amplification, active. The system seemed to reward actions that diverged from his previous timeline's mistakes while also reinforcing decisions that protected the people who mattered. Yanmu pocketed his phone and checked the time, 4:15. 3 hours until the poker game, 7 hours until the lottery drawing, 20 hours until the wire transfer deadline. He returned to his dorm and used the remaining afternoon hours to research the underground gambling network the system had identified. The high-stakes poker game happened in a private club downtown, invitation only, hosted by a businessman named Joe Ming who catered to wealthy clients looking for entertainment that regular casinos couldn't provide. Players typically bought in for $1 to $5 million, and games could run for 8 to 12 hours, with total pots sometimes exceeding $50 million. The system provided additional information about tonight's specific game. Poker game analysis. Participants, 8 confirmed players. Total buy-in pool, $43 million. Expected final pot, $78 million. Host buy-in required, minimum $5 million. System assistance available, probability calculation, opponent analysis, optimal play recommendations. Critical challenge, acquiring buy-in funds. Yanmu stared at the last line. He needed $5 million just to enter the game, money he wouldn't have until winning the lottery tonight, which wouldn't pay out until tomorrow at earliest. The timing created an impossible problem. He couldn't play without the buy-in, but he couldn't get the buy-in without playing. The system text updated. Alternative approach identified. Asset collateralization available. Host currently possesses lottery ticket, verified future value, $47 million recommendation. Use lottery ticket as collateral for immediate loan. Target lender, underground broker Greyhand Chen. Interest rate, 30%, due within 48 hours. Risk assessment, high but manageable. Yanmu pulled out his phone and searched for information about Greyhand Chen, a name that triggered memories from his previous timeline. Chen operated on the edges of legality, providing loans to people who couldn't access traditional banking, charging brutal interest rates but also honoring agreements with surprising reliability. In Yanmu's previous life, he'd heard stories about Chen but never dealt with him directly, having neither the assets nor the desperation required to enter that world. The system provided a contact number and optimal approach script. Yanmu hesitated for 30 seconds, weighing risks and alternatives, before making the call. A voice answered on the third ring, male, speaking with an accent that suggested origins in the southern provinces. Yes? My name is Yanmu. I need to borrow $5 million for 48 hours, with collateral provided. Silence on the line, then a laugh. $5 million. 48 hours. What kind of collateral could you possibly have that's worth that much? A lottery ticket with verified winning numbers for tonight's drawing, Yanmu said. Prize value $47 million. I'm offering it as collateral against a $5 million loan at 30% interest, to be repaid within 48 hours. The laughter stopped. You have winning lottery numbers. For tonight. And you want to borrow against them instead of just waiting to collect the prize. Correct. Why would you do something so stupid? Because I need the money tonight for an investment opportunity that won't wait, Yanmu explained. And because I'm confident in my ability to repay the loan with interest before the deadline. Another pause. Where are you? Yanmu gave his location, and Chen said, stay there. I'll arrive in 30 minutes. If you're wasting my time, this will go very badly for you. The call ended. Yanmu sat on his dorm room bed and waited, the lottery ticket in his pocket, the system's timer counting down in his vision, 17:12 and 33 seconds. This was insanity, borrowing money from an underground broker based on a lottery ticket that hadn't been drawn yet, planning to gamble that borrowed money in a high-stakes poker game against experienced players, all to meet a deadline that would kill him if he failed. But it was also the only path forward, and Yanmu had learned in God's sanctuary that survival often required choosing between terrible options and finding the one that killed you slowest. Exactly 28 minutes later, someone knocked on his dorm room door. Yanmu opened it to find a man in his 40s, dressed in an expensive suit that looked slightly wrong for his frame, like he'd bought it to fit an image rather than his actual body. His eyes were sharp, calculating, and they studied Yan Mu with an intensity that suggested he was accustomed to evaluating people for weaknesses. "You're younger than I expected," Chen said. 18? 19? 18, Yan Mu confirmed. "Does that matter?" "It matters because children usually don't have the stomach for the kind of debt I collect. Come with me. We'll go somewhere more private to discuss terms." Yan Mu followed Chen out of the building to a black sedan parked illegally in a loading zone. They drove for 15 minutes through the city, ending up at a warehouse in the industrial district, the kind of location where privacy was guaranteed and witnesses were discouraged. Inside, the warehouse had been converted into an office space, surprisingly clean and professional, with desks and filing cabinets that suggested legitimate business operations alongside the less legal activities. Chen sat behind one of the desks and gestured for Yan Mu to take the opposite chair. "Show me the lottery ticket." Yan Mu pulled it from his pocket and placed it on the desk. Chen examined it carefully, taking photographs with his phone, presumably to verify the numbers later. "And you're claiming these numbers will win tonight's drawing?" "I'm certain of it," Yan Mu said. "Certainty is expensive," Chen observed. "If you're right, this ticket is worth $47 million. If you're wrong, it's worth $2. I'm supposed to loan you $5 million against those odds? You're supposed to recognize that I wouldn't be here if I wasn't absolutely confident," Yan Mu countered. "And you're supposed to understand that the upside of being right vastly outweighs the risk of being wrong. If I fail to repay the loan, you keep the ticket and collect the full prize. Your downside is capped at the time and energy spent on this conversation." Chen smiled, an expression that didn't reach his eyes. "You talk like someone older than 18. Like someone who's already learned that everything has a cost and everyone has an angle. Where did you learn that? Does it matter?" "It might. Context helps me understand who I'm dealing with. Are you a smart kid who got lucky with some insider information, or are you something else?" Yan Mu met his gaze directly. "I'm someone who sees opportunities others miss and has the courage to act on them. That's all you need to know." Chen nodded slowly. $5 million at 30% interest. Repayment due within 48 hours, which means by this time on June 17th. If you fail to repay, I keep the lottery ticket and pursue additional collection methods for the remaining balance. Standard contract, non-negotiable terms. Accept or decline?" "I accept," Yan Mu said. "Then we have a deal." Chen pulled out a contract already prepared, as if he'd known Yan Mu would agree, and slid it across the desk with a pen. "Sign at the bottom. Read it if you want, but the terms are exactly what I stated. I don't hide clauses or surprise people with fine print. It's bad for business." Yan Mu read through the contract quickly, confirmed it matched the verbal terms, and signed. Chen countersigned and made copies, handing one to Yan Mu. "The money will be wired to your account within 3 hours. I assume you have a bank account?" "I do." Yan Mu provided his account information, and Chen entered it into a computer. "All set. You'll receive confirmation once the transfer completes. Don't spend it all in one place." Chen's smile returned, still not reaching his eyes. "Actually, from what I understand about your plans, you intend to do exactly that. High-stakes poker game at Joe Ming's club tonight. Interesting choice. Most people who borrow from me use the money for more practical purposes. You know about the game?" Yan Mu asked. "I know about everything that happens in this city's underground economy. Joe Ming runs a clean operation, relatively speaking. The games are fair, the house doesn't cheat, and winners actually collect their money. But the players are experienced, ruthless, and very good at separating naive newcomers from their bankrolls. Are you actually skilled at poker, or are you planning to rely purely on luck?" "I have advantages," Yan Mu said carefully. "I'm sure you do. Everyone who enters that game thinks they have an advantage. Most of them are wrong." Chen leaned back in his chair. "A piece of advice, since you're now my client and I prefer clients who can repay their debts, poker at that level isn't just about the cards. It's about reading people, understanding psychology, knowing when to push and when to fold. If you go in there treating it like a game of chance, you'll lose everything within 2 hours." "I appreciate the advice," Yan Mu said, standing. "Is there anything else you need from me?" "Just the repayment in 48 hours. I'll be watching the lottery results tonight with considerable interest. If those numbers actually hit, I'll be impressed. If they don't, well, we'll be having a very different conversation." Chen drove Yan Mu back to campus, and they parted ways without further conversation. Yan Mu checked his phone, 5:45. The wire transfer wouldn't complete for another 2 hours at minimum, and the poker game started at 7. He'd have to arrive late, but the system indicated that was acceptable, possibly even optimal, as it would allow him to observe players before committing to hands. He used the remaining time to shower, change into the nicest clothes he owned, and review the system's information about the poker game participants. 8 players total, each one profiled with the kind of detail that should have been impossible to access. Player 1, Zhou Ming, the host, 62 years old, wealthy through a combination of legitimate businesses and underground operations, skilled poker player who treated the game as entertainment rather than income. Player 2, Li Hua, 47 years old, real estate developer, aggressive playing style, tendency to overestimate hand strength. Player 3, Wei Dong, 53 years old, tech company CEO, conservative player, only bets when holding strong hands. Player 4, Zhao Lin, 39 years old, professional gambler, expert level skill, primary threat to Yan Mu's success. Player 5, Tang Fei, 44 years old, pharmaceutical executive, competent but exploitable, makes mathematically sound decisions but lacks intuition. Player 6, Sun Wei, 51 years old, investment banker, medium skill level, plays emotionally when losing. Player 7, Huang Yi, 46 years old, manufacturing magnate, wealthy enough to treat losses as entertainment, plays recklessly. Player 8, reserved for Yan Mu. The system provided detailed analysis of each player's tendencies, optimal strategies for exploiting their weaknesses, and probability calculations for various hand scenarios. With this information, Yan Mu didn't need to be the best poker player in the room, he needed to be adequate while leveraging insights nobody else possessed. At 7:15, his phone buzzed with a notification. $5 million had been deposited into his account, verified and cleared. Yan Mu confirmed the transfer and immediately called a taxi to take him to the address Zhou Ming's club occupied, a building in the downtown area that looked like a legitimate restaurant from the outside but housed private rooms where serious money changed hands away from public scrutiny. The taxi arrived at 7:42. Yan Mu paid the driver and entered through a front door that led into an actual restaurant, busy with normal customers eating dinner, none of them aware that the real business happened on the 3rd floor in rooms accessible only through a private elevator. A host recognized Yan Mu as out of place, approached with a polite but firm demeanor, and said, "Can I help you?" "I'm here for the game on the 3rd floor," Yan Mu said. "Zhou Ming is expecting me." The host's expression shifted slightly, reassessing. "Your name?" "Yan Mu." The host made a phone call, speaking quietly, then gestured toward a discreet door behind the main dining area. "3rd floor. Someone will meet you at the elevator." Yan Mu took the elevator up, and when the doors opened, a man in a dark suit stood waiting, clearly security, his eyes scanning Yan Mu with professional thoroughness. "Yan Mu? Zhou Ming said you'd be arriving late. The game is already in progress. Do you have the buy-in?" $5 million, Yan Mu confirmed. "In my account, ready to transfer." "This way." The security guard led him down a hallway to a heavy wooden door, beyond which Yan Mu could hear muted voices and the distinctive sound of poker chips clicking together. The guard opened the door, and Yan Mu entered a private room that looked like something from a movie: green felt table, professional dealer, expensive liquor on a side bar, and 7 men who all turned to look at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to dismissive contempt. Zhou Ming, sitting at the head of the table, smiled. "Yan Mu, I presume. Gray Han Chen called ahead to vouch for you, which is the only reason you're being allowed entry. You're young. Younger than anyone we've ever had at this table. But money is money, and Chen says yours is legitimate. Take a seat. We'll process your buy-in and get you chips." Yan Mu sat in the empty 8th chair and provided his banking information to the dealer, who processed the transfer on a tablet. $5 million moved from his account to the game's escrow, and a stack of chips appeared in front of him, each one representing substantial value. Around the table, the other players studied him with varying degrees of interest, trying to determine if he was a threat, a fool, or entertainment. Zhao Lin, the professional gambler, leaned forward slightly. "What's your story, kid? Trust fund baby looking for thrills? Lottery winner who doesn't understand odds? Or do you actually think you can compete at this table?" "I think I can hold my own," Yan Mu said calmly. "We'll see," Zhao Lin said, smiling in a way that suggested he'd already dismissed Yan Mu as a source of easy profit. The dealer began a new hand, cards sliding across the felt with practiced efficiency. Yan Mu picked up his whole cards and felt the system activate, text appearing in his vision that only he could see. Hand analysis, pocket jacks. Opponent hand estimates, 73% accuracy. Optimal play recommendation, small raise, assess responses. Probability of winning hand, 34%. Yan Mu followed the system's guidance, making a small raise that kept him in the hand without committing too heavily. 3 players called, the rest folded, and the flop came down showing Jack, 7, 3 with 2 hearts. The system updated its analysis. Hand strength, 3 of a kind, Jack's probability of winning, 76%. Threat assessment, player 4, Yahello, possibly holding flush draw. Recommendation, medium bet, build pot carefully. Yan Mu bet according to the system's guidance, and 2 players folded while Zhao Lin called, confirming the flush draw assessment. The turn card came, not a heart, and Yan Mu's winning probability increased to 89%. He bet aggressively, and Zhao Lin called again, pot now reaching $300,000. The river card was a heart. Zhao Lin's flush completed. The system flagged the danger but also noted that Zhao Lin's betting pattern suggested a flush without the ace of hearts, meaning Yan Mu's 3 jacks would lose but not catastrophically. The optimal play was to check and fold if Zhao Lin bet large, minimizing losses on a hand that had turned against him. Yan Mu checked. Zhao Lin bet 200,000. Yan Mu folded, losing the pot but only 150,000 of his stack, preserving capital for better opportunities. Around the table, several players nodded approvingly at the disciplined fold, recognizing that rookie players often refuse to release strong hands even when beaten. The game continued for 3 hours, hands rising and falling, chips moving around the table in a complex dance of probability and psychology. Yan Mu played conservatively, using the system's analysis to make optimal decisions, folding more often than he played, winning modestly when his hands connected. The other players began adjusting their assessment of him, recognizing that he wasn't the naive fool they'd expected but also not seeing him as a serious threat. At 11 o'clock, during a break where players stepped away from the table to eat food provided by the restaurant downstairs, Yan Mu checked his phone. The lottery drawing had happened at 10. His numbers had won. The ticket sitting as collateral with Grey Hand Chen was now worth $47 million, guaranteed money that would arrive within 24 hours. But he still needed to win big at this poker game to reach the $100 million threshold, and his current stack stood at $4.8 million after 3 hours of play, down $200,000 from his buy-in. He was losing slowly, playing too conservatively, and time was running out. The system text updated with new information. Phase 2 recommendations. Current strategy, too passive. Necessary adjustment, aggressive play during optimal situations. Upcoming opportunity identified, hand at 11:23 p.m. will provide maximum exploitation potential. Preparation required, establish table image as tight player, already complete host status, ready for major engagement. Yan Mu returned to the table as the game resumed. For the next 20 minutes, he continued his conservative approach, folding mediocre hands, winning small pots when cards connected, maintaining the image of a careful player who only engaged with strong holdings. The other players relaxed slightly, no longer viewing him as dynamically dangerous, just another competent amateur who would lose his buy-in gradually through fees and unlucky hands. Then the clock struck 11:23, and the dealer began the hand the system had identified. Yan Mu looked at his whole cards, ace-king suited in hearts. The system's analysis exploded with information. Hand analysis, ace-king suited, hearts optimal opportunity detected. Player 4, Yahello, pocket queens, 91% certainty. Player 5, Tang Fei, king jack offsuit, 87% certainty. Player 6, Sun Wei, pocket tens, 93% certainty. Flop prediction, king ace 3, 2 hearts winning probability post flop, 94%. Recommendation, maximum aggression, build largest pot possible. The information was precise, detailed, and if accurate would represent the biggest pot of the night. Yan Mu felt his heart rate increase but kept his expression neutral. 3 players with strong hands, all likely to commit heavily, all going into a flop that would give him the absolute nuts. Zhou Ming opened with a small raise from early position. Zhao Lin re-raised, signaling pocket pair strength. Tang Fei called the re-raise, and Sun Wei moved all in for his remaining $3.2 million, a massive overbet that screamed pocket pair. The action folded around to Yan Mu. He looked at his chips, $4.8 million total. Moving all in would commit his entire stack, risking everything on cards he hadn't seen yet, trusting the system's predictions about both opponent hands and the upcoming flop. If the system was wrong, if any calculation was off, he'd lose everything and fail his mission before the deadline even arrived. Yan Mu pushed his entire stack into the center. All in. The table went silent. Zhou Ming folded immediately, recognizing the pot had grown too large for his hand. Zhao Lin studied Yan Mu carefully, his professional gambler instincts warring with the strength of his pocket queens. After 30 seconds of consideration, he called, adding $1.6 million on top of Sun Wei's all-in. Tang Fei folded, the smart decision against such massive action. 3 players remained, Yan Mu with ace-king suited, Zhao Lin with pocket queens, Sun Wei with pocket tens. Total pot, $13 million, by far the largest of the night. If Yan Mu's hand held, if the flop came as the system predicted, he'd triple his stack in a single hand. The dealer burned a card and revealed the flop: King of Hearts, Ace of Diamonds, 3 of Clubs. Exactly as predicted. Yan Mu had flopped 2 pair, top 2 pair, with the absolute best possible holdings. Zhao Lin's queens were beaten. Sun Wei's tens were crushed. The system's probability updated, 96% to win. The turn card came, 7 of Hearts, giving Yan Mu a flush draw as backup but not changing the fundamental hand dynamics. The river, 4 of Spades, a blank that changed nothing. Yan Mu's 2 pair held against 2 strong pocket pairs, and $13 million in chips was pushed across the table to his position. Zhou Ming laughed, a genuine sound of appreciation. That was beautifully played. You waited 3 hours, established yourself as tight and conservative, then called an all-in with ace-king and flopped top 2 pair against pocket queens and pocket tens. Either you're the luckiest player I've ever seen, or you have timing I've never witnessed. Zhao Lin stared at the board, then at Yan Mu, his expression unreadable. You played that hand like you knew what was coming. Like you'd seen the future. Just luck, Yan Mu said, but the system's text appeared in his vision showing Zhao Lin's suspicion rating increasing. The professional gambler was too skilled not to notice something unusual, even if he couldn't identify exactly what felt wrong. Sun Wei stood from the table, having lost his entire buy-in, and left without comment. The game continued with 7 players, but the dynamic had shifted. Yan Mu now had the largest stack by far, over $13 million, and the other players treated him with new respect mixed with wariness. For the next 2 hours, Yan Mu played aggressively when the system indicated optimal situations, conservatively when probability suggested caution, and by 1:30 in the morning, his stack had grown to $23 million. He'd eliminated 2 more players and established himself as the dominant force at the table. Zhou Ming called for a final break and approached Yan Mu at the sidebar. Impressive performance for your first time at this level. Gray Hand Chen was right to vouch for you. Are you planning to continue, or would you prefer to cash out while you're ahead? I'll play another hour if the table continues, Yan Mu said. It will continue as long as players remain. But I should mention that Zhao Lin has been watching you very carefully. He suspects something, though he can't prove anything. Professional gamblers have instincts about these things. If I were you, I'd consider leaving while relationships remain cordial. Yan Mu nodded, understanding the warning. 1 more hour. Then I'll cash out regardless of the situation. They returned to the table, and the final hour was brutal. Zhao Lin played aggressively against Yan Mu specifically, trying to force mistakes or expose whatever edge he suspected existed. But the system provided perfect information about Zhao Lin's tactics, allowing Yan Mu to counter effectively, winning some pots and folding others, maintaining his stack while avoiding catastrophic confrontation. At 2:30, Yan Mu announced he was cashing out. His final stack, $27.4 million, a profit of $22.4 million in 7 hours of play. Zhou Ming processed the transfer personally, moving the money from escrow to Yan Mu's account, and the other players watched with expressions ranging from grudging respect to barely concealed hostility. Zhao Lin stood as Yan Mu prepared to leave. Before you go, I want to say something. In 20 years of professional poker, I've never seen anyone play with such consistent optimal decision-making. Every hand you played was mathematically sound. Every fold was perfectly timed. Every aggression was maximally exploitative. That's not luck, and it's not just skill. I don't know what advantage you have, but you have something. I study probability, Yan Mu said simply. So do I. That's not what this was. Zhao Lin extended his hand. But a win is a win, and you played within the rules. If you come back to this table, I'll be ready for you. They shook hands, and Yan Mu left the building, emerging into the early morning darkness of a city that never truly slept. His phone showed 3:07 a.m. The system's timer displayed 9:42 and 51 seconds remaining. He had less than 10 hours to convert his current assets into $100 million and complete the wire transfer to Kun Rui. Current resources, $27.4 million in his account from poker winnings, $47 million in lottery winnings that would be available within 12 hours, total of $74.4 million. He needed to reach $100 million, meaning $25.6 million more. The system text appeared. Mission status update. Current verified assets, $27,400,000. Pending lottery collection, $47 million, available 2 p.m. Total projected assets, $74,400,000. Remaining required, $25,600,000. Solution identified, Leverage lottery winnings for immediate bridge loan. Contact Gray Han Chen, request advancement against verified lottery ticket. Estimated advancement available, $30 million to $35 million. Final mission completion, achievable within deadline. Yan Mu called Gray Han Chen despite the hour. The man answered on the second ring, sounding fully awake. I watched the lottery drawing. Your numbers won. I'm impressed and annoyed in equal measure. Impressed because you were right. Annoyed because I could have kept that ticket and collected $47 million if you'd failed. I need another favor, Yan Mu said. I need you to advance me $30 million against the lottery ticket, to be repaid when I collect the prize this afternoon. Chen was quiet for 5 seconds. You're asking me to loan you money against money I'm already loaning you money against. That's recursive debt at a level that would make most brokers refuse on principle. But you're not most brokers, Yan Mu said. And the math works. The ticket is verified as worth $47 million. You advance me $30 million now, I repay the original $5 million plus interest immediately, and when I collect the full lottery prize this afternoon, I repay the $30 million advancement plus whatever interest you charge. You end up with substantial profit for essentially zero risk. The interest on $30 million for 12 hours would be astronomical, Chen warned. I'll pay it. Another pause. You're either the most confident person I've ever met or the most self-destructive. Meet me at my office in 1 hour. We'll structure the deal. But understand that this level of debt means if anything goes wrong, the consequences will be severe. I understand. Yan Mu took a taxi to Chen's warehouse office and arrived at 4:15 a.m. Chen was already there, contract prepared, terms laid out in clear language. $30 million advanced immediately, to be repaid within 24 hours with 20% interest, total repayment of $36 million. The original $5 million loan plus its 30% interest would be settled simultaneously, total of $6.5 million. Combined repayment, $42.5 million against a verified $47 million lottery prize, leaving Yan Mu with $4.5 million after all debts cleared. The math worked, barely, and only if nothing unexpected happened. Yan Mu signed the contract. Chen initiated the wire transfer, and $30 million hit Yan Mu's account at 4:37 a.m. Combined with his poker winnings, he now controlled $57.4 million in liquid assets, still short of the $100 million threshold. The system provided the final piece of the puzzle. Asset optimization strategy.